We've spent the last couple of days in Denver, but today's adventure is taking us to Boulder, Colorado, right on the edge of the Rocky Mountains. Welcome everyone. Oh wait a minute, that's not my intro. We have an interesting topic for today's video. In 1996, a young child by the name of JonBenet Ramsey was reported missing.
My name is JonBenet Ramsey and I'm 5½. I wanna be a cowboy sweetheart. I wanna learn to rope and to ride.
At 749 15th Street in Boulder, Colorado, which is right here behind me, a young JonBenet Ramsey's body was found in the basement of this house. This is the house. The property is actually owned by someone who lived here for 2 years after JonBenet Ramsey's death, then moved away, and the house has sat here vacant since 2008. We can't get in. Obviously, there's a metal bar here keeping people out, but JonBenet Ramsey was found right inside of the basement of this house right here. There's a multitude of people that actually point the finger to the parents, although no one has ever been arrested in this case. Today we are going to revisit this tragic 23-year-old case, and we're going to talk about the story of JonBenet Ramsey. The story of the little pageant queen, JonBenet Ramsey, is one of the most popular unsolved murders ever. Right up there with Jack the Ripper. The case has gotten much critical acclaim, and it's been all over. There's been documentaries made about it, and movies, stories, and it's still a mystery to this day. JonBenet Ramsey and her family were originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and she's actually buried in Marietta, Georgia. I've actually been to see her grave prior to coming here. We are here near Marietta, Georgia, and here is the final resting place of JonBenet Ramsey. As you can see, some people have placed some toys here for her to play with. Her mother was also buried right here near her, and she is buried right next to her older sister, who was her father's oldest child from his previous marriage before Patsy. She died in a car accident. Rest in peace, JonBenet. Rest in peace. The night leading up to JonBenet Ramsey's death was Christmas 1996. The Ramsey family had gone to a Christmas party at a friend's house. JonBenet Ramsey fell asleep on their way home. When they made it home, Patsy Ramsey picked her up out of the car, took her inside and up to her bed, and laid her there to go to sleep. Both John and Patsy, a little bit later, went to bed themselves. Patsy woke up early in the morning and started heading down their spiral staircase when something caught her eye. 3 sheets of paper laying on the bottom step of the staircase. It was a ransom note. The infamous ransom note. She began reading and instantly ran up to JonBenet Ramsey's room, where she had laid her to sleep the night before. There was no one there. The bed was empty. Patsy immediately called 911, even though the note said not to.
We are kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on. Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out and she's right here. Oh my God, please.
Then for some reason after that, she invited all of their friends to come over to the house, and it ultimately tainted the crime scene. There were people walking in and out everywhere. The Boulder, Colorado Police Department caused most of the evidence to be tainted, and in fact, one of the detectives told the Ramseys to search their house. Start at the top and work your way down. That's not the way it's supposed to be done, because if they were to find evidence, as they did, they would not know how to react. It would be tainted. The procedure here would be to pull the Ramseys out, take them to the police headquarters to sit down and have a chat while things are still fresh on their mind, while other officers are searching the house. That should be the correct procedure, but it was not followed here. They told John and Patsy to search the house, and John began searching the house, but he did not go to the top like the investigator told him. John went down to the basement first. During that search of the house, her father actually found her in the basement. She had duct tape around her mouth and a cord wrapped around her throat, and her hands had rope around them. She had a gaping wound on the top of her head. She also had marks, one on her lower back and one on her face, which would later turn out to be identified as stun gun marks. There was also signs of a sexual assault. It's heartbreaking. Against all the rules, John Ramsey immediately picked her up. He also, on his way up the stairs, grabs a blanket and throws over her. He knows she's dead, which completely destroyed the crime scene. Immediately following the discovery of JonBenet Ramsey's body, the case changed from a missing persons case to a murder investigation, and immediately her parents became suspects because of all the glaring inconsistencies. Like the ransom note. I mean, who would leave a ransom note wanting money if they were just going to kill her before the note was even found? I mean, it doesn't make sense. From the very start, they suspected John and Patsy. The very next day after her discovery, police took her parents' DNA to match against the samples that they found on JonBenet Ramsey's body, in her underwear, under her fingernails. It was not a match to either one of them. Then they began examining the ransom note and handwriting from all of the family members. Most of all of them were clearly not a match. None of them even resembled it except one. They could not rule out that the note was written by Patsy Ramsey. Also, the ransom note was very strange and also very detailed. They asked for $118,000 in their ransom. But I mean, that's it. The Ramseys were worth millions. I mean, heck, the house alone probably cost a couple $1 million. And then on top of that, that $118,000 was almost the exact same amount that John had just gotten as a Christmas bonus from his work. Who else would have known about that number? No one. The police even investigated everyone at John's work who may have known that information, and they were all cleared very, very, very quickly. Back to the ransom note that was found inside of this house. It was actually drafted on a notepad in the house, so that they made a rough draft of the ransom note, and then they still had time to rewrite the ransom note completely in its full format. I mean, they were seemingly there forever writing the ransom note. They had a ton of time. No one was supposed to be in the house but the parents and JonBenet's brother. That piece of information also caused the investigation to be tainted, because with that info alone, they didn't follow up on any other leads or go on any manhunts, any neighborhood sweeps. They put all of their eggs in the Ramseys' basket. They concluded it had to have been done from the inside, but they still had no concrete evidence to charge them. The police asked them to come in for an interview, and the Ramseys refused. After many, many attempts to get them to come in, they finally agreed to come in, but only with their lawyers.
I'm talking about scientific evidence.
I don't give a flying flip how scientific it is. Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it.
6 days after the discovery of JonBenet Ramsey's body, her parents gave their first interview, not with police, but with a news station. And much like the Chris Watts interviews, they completely bombed it. They took a lot of heat after those interviews because people said Patsy looked like she was drugged up on Xanax, and John kept looking down, which supposedly means he was lying or he was ashamed of something. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know if that's what it means, but supposedly that's what it means. All of these missteps only strengthened the Boulder Police's single-minded investigation against the Ramseys. 6 weeks later, the police still had no leads and no evidence. They did have two theories as to what happened to JonBenet Ramsey, but both of them involved her family causing her death. One being that JonBenet was a bedwetter, and in a fit of rage over it, her mother killed her. The second being that her brother accidentally hit her over the head with something, causing her death, and trying to cover it up so that they didn't lose their daughter and their son. They staged the ransom note and made it look like something else happened. There's way too many questions in this case, way too many. Present day, there are still two theories, but they differ just a little bit. The first theory, there was an intruder who crawled in through a basement window, went up into JonBenet Ramsey's room, used the stun gun on her, carried her down to the basement where they sexually assaulted her, hit her over the head, and strangled her. And the second one is still that her brother accidentally hit her over the head and her parents covered it up as to not lose another child. That's the two theories. That's all they got. 3 months after JonBenet's death, the case was going cold. It was going nowhere. So the DA gave a press conference to try and get more leads. His speech was crafted by special FBI agents, word for word, to draw a response from the killer. The FBI told the DA if he read their speech, then usually within 24 hours, there would be a suicide or someone would call with a new tip they hadn't heard before. The FBI told them that this was a common tactic that they used, and right on cue, just less than 24 hours later, a suicide was discovered. A 26-year-old male, Michael Helgoth, shot himself. He lived not far down the street from the Ramseys. They found boots in his house that matched a boot impression in the wine cellar basement perfectly. It was a 100% match. They also found a stun gun in his possession that perfectly lined up with the stun gun marks on JonBenet Ramsey's back and her head. But again, you can count on the Boulder PD. They made no attempt to try to connect them to her death. No attempt whatsoever. 9 days before JonBenet Ramsey's death, she entered and won the Little Miss Christmas beauty pageant in Boulder. A witness from that pageant said that she saw a man approach JonBenet Ramsey. She got suspicious and she went over to see what was going on, and the man turned around and identified himself as her father, which turned out to not be true. It was not John. Was that her killer? Well, the official report says that man was never identified. Many believe leads were overlooked because the police had an inability to look anywhere else besides the Ramseys. They were zeroed in. There was also a guy in Thailand, John Mark Carr, would later confess to her murder, and there was evidence that he met her at a beauty pageant in Atlanta, Georgia. Again, his DNA was not a match, and they had to let him go. As I said, a multitude of people believe that the parents were involved in her murder, but again, no charges have ever been filed in the case. Several times throughout the years, the case has been reopened and investigated with new DNA evidence. In 1999, the grand jury recommended that the district attorney file charges against the parents of JonBenet Ramsey. Ultimately, the district attorney decided that there was not enough evidence. The charges were never filed. In 2008, prosecutors officially cleared John and Patsy Ramsey of any and all charges. Unfortunately, in June of 2006, Patsy Ramsey passed away from ovarian cancer. She was 49 years old. She didn't live long enough to see her daughter get justice. Today, this house stands empty, but the investigation into the death of JonBenet Ramsey stands open still. That is going to do it for the story of JonBenet Ramsey here in Boulder, Colorado. Hopefully one day this case is resolved and some answers and justice can be served in the case. I want to thank you all for watching. I will see you tomorrow. We're still in Colorado another day. Again, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.